Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. I just love it that we have a team of experts available at all times, because I am not that person. I am not an expert on anything. My knowledge is about a mile wide and an inch deep. But when it comes to legal stuff, especially when it comes to California, which is kind of where it ends up being ground central for an awful lot of things. On legal matters, we go to Chuck Michel, Michel and Associates, also California Rifle and Pistol Association, works with a lot of different groups. Chuck, thank you so much for being here and trying to decipher this stuff for us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Tom.
All right, I guess the big story, the one that I haven't even mentioned on the air yet, is this week they had this massive data breach or leak, or as I like to call it, a release. You want to kind of just explain what the heck happened?
Sure. A little background. A couple years ago, they passed a bill to allow a lot of private firearms-related data, including dealer records of sales, CCW holders, assault weapon, so-called assault weapon registrations, to be used by a historically biased anti-gun researcher at the University of, I think it's at Berkeley. Anyway, they're giving him money, and he was supposed to do some studies on this. And at the time, we said, this data is not going to be secure. And they said, don't worry, there's all kinds of privacy protections and security. And then the governor, the Attorney General, in response to the Bruen decision from the Supreme Court, that wonderful, wonderful piece of news, they're all going apoplectic up there. And the Attorney General decided that he was going to turn a lot of that information over to the general public, not just to the private researchers. And so he opened this portal up, but in doing so, he put a lot more information out there, made a lot more information public than he was supposed to. The question is whether he meant to intentionally reveal some of this information, because the most damaging part of this is the information includes the street addresses for several 100,000 folks in the state who have licenses to carry firearms. That includes judges, celebrities, prosecutors, some poor woman who was being stalked and
exactly.
tried to hide where she was and had a gun.
Right. You got a woman who may have gotten a license and has a gun, and she's trying to hide out from an ex who's threatened to kill her or tried to kill her, and now they've just published. And just for people to understand, the information they've released included the names, the dates of birth, gender, race, driver's license number, and the addresses of these people. It was a complete list of where to go to steal guns, where to go to find an ex, where to go to find that judge who sentenced you to jail that now you've been released. I mean, not only was it horrible and unconscionable, it was illegal.
Yes, yes, in multiple respects. And the problem is you can't unring the bell. I mean, we're putting together a class action or some other type of litigation. There are some damages in these privacy laws, but it's not enough to really change the political viewpoint in rigged Sacramento of the so-called progressive politicians who, we're trying to figure out if this was actually intentional, because it wouldn't surprise us. Right now, Sacramento is so hostile to gun rights because they're so mad and they're such sore losers about the Supreme Court's decision that they're doing everything they can to limit the usefulness of that right to carry, because they're going to have to issue a lot more.
Right.
And one of the things they would like to do is scare people away from doing it, but from trying to get one, because they're afraid their private information is going to be released.
There you go. I mean, it's like, okay, you want to apply for a permit? Just let you know. We're going to tell the world where you live, that you bought a gun, that you have a permit, what your driver's license number is, everything about you. This is what we're going to do to you if you have the temerity and the gall to actually want to exercise your Second Amendment right. And Chuck, I want to make sure people understand, when they published this week, put it on the internet, it had a download button with it.
Correct.
You could click the button and download the entire file, which means a bunch of people did. And that means it will appear on the internet in one form or another from now until perpetuity. This information is going to be out there and nobody can hide from it.
It's on the dark web, no matter what they try and do, the cat is out of the bag, and there are so many furious people. I've been contacted by several thousand people in the last few days, and so we'll put something together, and we'll sue, and we'll get to the bottom of this, and we want to hold whoever is responsible for this accountable. In fact, CRPA and GOC are now working on an effort to a petition effort to get Bonta to resign, because this is such a screw up, a breach of government trust of such massive and catastrophic proportions. No one who has these permits, no one whose address is out there, is going to be able to feel safe again. And in talking to some of these people, it's like, well, I have to worry about who's at my house when I'm not there. It's one thing if I'm there and someone comes in and I'm on guard and ready to try and defend myself. But what if I just have my housekeeper or my kids playing at my house and someone's coming? Right. This is the kind of fear that that several 100,000 people are now being forced to live with because of because we trusted the government and the government screwed us. Well,
and people ask,
why are we against registration?
Exactly. That's where I was going to go next. Is people say, well, what's wrong with registration? This is what's wrong with registration. You then put the information out, private information on everybody. You make them vulnerable, and you say to all the criminals, here's a list of guns you can steal.
Right. It's a target list and a scarlet letter. I mean, it's so infuriating. I'm a lawyer. I like to try and solve people's problems, but I can't solve this. What am I going to get you a check for? No matter how big a check, it's not going to solve the problem.
You can't get it back. And I agree with you. I believe this was totally intentional. I believe this was an in-your-face after the Bruen decision. This was one of those, we're going to do this, and there'll be nothing you can do about it. Even if you sue them, even if you get damages, the people who did it are not going to be held responsible. The money will come from the taxpayers. Chuck, Let me do this, and we're going to end up short of time. Let's also talk about what just happened, because we had the Bruen decision, which was fabulous in and of itself, and then we have the Supreme Court doing a GVR, grant, vacate, and remand on 4 important cases, and California was a big part of that, right?
Yes, the Duncan case, the challenging the ban on the possession of magazines that can hold over 10 rounds. We won in the district court. We won at the 3-judge panel decision in the Ninth Circuit. And as the Ninth Circuit loves to do, they then took it up to the en banc 11-judge panel because they don't want us to win. Mm-hmm. Certain judges on the Ninth Circuit don't want us to win. And they reversed it at the 11th judge en banc panel. We asked the Supreme Court to review that en banc panel. And what the Supreme Court does when it decides a decision that has consequences, decides a case that has consequences for other cases, it won't necessarily address the merits on all those other cases at one time. Instead, it vacates those opinions because they were based on previous case of precedent, and tell the lower courts, hey, reconsider your opinion in light of this decision that we just rendered. So in light of the Bruen decision and the new standard of review that the Bruen decision imposes, which gets rid of this bias, well, some of the bias anyway, that was so prevalent in these underlying opinions, the courts now have to reconsider that. So that's a big win for that case in California. Similarly, the New Jersey magazine possession ban was GVR'd, remanded back for reconsideration.
Well, and the Maryland so-called assault weapons ban, which was massive. Let me ask you, when the Supreme Court does this, is that kind of the equivalent of saying, okay, lower courts, we're going to send this back to you with instructions. The instructions are in the Bruen decision, and we're going to tell you, do better, try again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the Bruen decision said flat out, all the lower courts have been applying the wrong test to determine the constitutionality of a law. And they've been trying to do this balancing of interests where they give the government way too much credit for actually thinking anything through. The politicians pass laws based on what they can say at a press conference, not on sound evidence. And so now that we've been winning because they don't have the evidence, but now they just have to go back and try and show some analogous historical law which would ban certain types of firearms or ban public carry. They tried to do that in the Bruen case, and there is no historical analog. So the court said, no, you can't. You have to give these licenses. Of course, vindictive, sore loser politicians that they are, now they want to expand the definition of sensitive place so that you can't carry, you can't have your CCW is no good within 5,000 feet of a church, a school, or a stop sign. You know what I mean?
But even in the Bruen case, Clarence Thomas actually anticipated that and addressed it. Says you can't just say that because people have a lot of population someplace that you can make it all, off limits. But another thing, I wanted to bounce this off of you. There's no historical analog to banning guns in churches or in schools, from 1790s. So I'm just wondering if a lot of these, if not most of these, end up falling.
Well, I hope so, and we're certainly going to do everything to make them fall. I've got lawyers working all weekend on challenges to those sensitive place designations. Newsom hasn't signed that bill yet, but the minute he does, we'll be ready to drop the lawsuit. In the meantime, he did sign a bill banning advertising of firearms to minors, and effectively that will ban all the youth shooting camps and all the other youth training programs. I mean, in typical, close enough for government work, sloppy lawmaking, they draft something saying they're trying to do one thing, but really it does a lot more. So we're going in for a TRO on that on Tuesday. But this is part of, they want to make it impossible for people to own a gun or use a gun, grown-ups. And then they don't want us to be able to pass on this heritage to the youth. This is part of Newsom's and the California legislature's effort to eradicate the gun culture. Newsom hasn't made a secret of this. He's publicly announced that he wants to eliminate the gun culture.
Well, in California, it's a tough battle, but right now you have been given an enormous snap-on toolbox full of tools in the Bruen decision, and I know you got, folks that are getting ready and they're going to work on it right now.
Yes, and the biggest, the best tool in that toolbox is a BFH, a big friggin' hammer, because that's what we're going to use on these politicians. But I suspect, the problem with this is what they're trying to do is overwhelm us. They're trying to pass so many. There's 20 bills pending, and
New York just did the same thing. Yes,
exactly, and that's going to be their strategy. They're going to red tape things to death. Try and work through the little slivers of windows that they think they can argue exist in the Supreme Court's ruling. To a good moral character is now going to be, if you ever took a mulligan on a golf game, you have bad moral character. You know what I mean? They're just going to make everything so expansive.
Is it requiring
some kind of ridiculous training requirement?
Well, not only that, and then having you have to submit all your information about your social media, and then having them look at your social media post to see if you're worthy to be able to get a carry permit. Isn't that just another way of saying a proper cause? It's just a different way of getting around this deal.
Oh yeah. And what's it going to come down to? Conservatives need not apply. Who's going to be evaluating your social media accounts and what you posted there? Imagine the mistakes. You curate, you retweet or repost something that someone else wrote because you think it's interesting, but it may not reflect your personal opinion. But because you reposted it, they're going to say it does and deny you. This is how absurd this has become. This is how
now this is where the First Amendment, and the Second Amendment starts to intersect with the First Amendment on these, and with advertising to minors, and with a lot of other things. So
exactly,
you guys are going to have full employment for a while.
Yeah, the First Amendment on the gun shows. They have 3 different bills banning gun shows. Yes, but the only thing is, Tom, nobody's getting rich off of this. Nobody's funneling money into anybody's pocket here. All of us are true believers. All the lawyers that work at my law firm are true believers. We could be making more money at a big firm representing, Exxon or some crap. But we believe in this. It means something to us. But even so, I'd like to work for nothing, but my wife won't let me. We you know what I mean?
Well,
I got to make something, and I got to pay my lawyer something. So we just need the funds. We just need the funds. This is going to be a 7-figure exercise fighting all these bills.
Well, I appreciate what you do. Is it the CRP, California Rifle and Pistol Association, and Chuck Michel and Associates? Thank you so much for what you're doing. Please do this. Keep us posted. We can get you on as frequently as necessary to get the word out, okay?
Well, you want to cover what happens in our TRO next week on that youth events ban. That'll be a big news.
I will be watching it, and we'll get the word out. Thank you so much, Chuck. I very much appreciate it.